Welcome back to Rumi Gold, where quiet mastery begins. What if the strength you're hunting is not in your account, but in your field? What if the hunger for more was actually a call to return home, not to reach further? What if your energy was the only true currency that never runs dry? What if it was never really about having more, but about being more? Or, listen in. What if everything outside the body is just a shadow of what lives within it? Today, we explore the foundational power of energy over money, not as some tactic, but as truth. A raw kind of truth, the kind that lands in your chest, not in a spreadsheet. Where, in your life, have you chased the dollar at the cost of your peace? Where have you said yes, but your nervous system screamed no? Where are you wealthy in possessions, but bankrupt in presence? That's the real poverty, the absence of aliveness. The bankruptcy that doesn't show on a balance sheet, but shows up every morning when you wake up tired, even after 8 hours of sleep. I've watched men with more than enough money, but a poverty of spirit. I've watched women run companies, houses, meetings, and run themselves hollow at the same time. I remember sitting across from a client last fall, call him Andrew. On paper, he had made it. A business that netted high 6 figures, a wife, 2 smart kids, a house perched on a hill. But Andrew's eyes wouldn't meet mine. They kept landing somewhere below. His jaw was tight, his hands restless. He told me, "I'm winning the game, but I feel like I lost the reason I started." His body said what his mouth did not. Exhausted, distracted, hungry for something money could not supply. He had the cash, but not the current. The outer empire was fully built, but the inner spark was running on fumes. He asked me with a voice half audible, "Is this all there is?" Let that land. You already know this story, in your own way. Maybe you've tried more effort, more output, more hustle. Maybe you've even tried to force a kind of comfort, buying the coffee, making the upgrades, promising once you reach X, the feeling will click. But the feeling rarely arrives with the money. It arrives when energy is clean, when your internal grid is charged, awake, and steady, when the nervous system is not in panic or chase, but in presence and grounded in its own gravity. The cost of ignoring this is real, not just burnout, not just stress or empty metrics, or evenings scrolling because you're too tired to even enjoy what you've earned. The cost is deeper. Trust gets eroded. The self gets fragmented. You stop hearing your own signal. Life becomes reaction, not creation. You might gain the job, but lose the joy. You might close the deal, but find nothing closes inside. You might get respect from others, but lose respect for your own boundaries. That's the discipline. There's something inside you listening for this message. Something far beneath the analytics and advice. You already feel it. The pull for something unbreakable. A kind of clarity, not for show, but for shelter. A wealth that doesn't need proof or an audience. Energy, real, embodied energy, does not shout and does not beg. It isn't chasing anything. It sits in the room like still water, undisturbed, unmoved by circumstance. This is the root of all true power. People sense it when they're near someone who has it. Someone who could lose the money, but never lose the field. Someone for whom enough is not a number, but a feeling in the gut and the chest. Someone who moves slow enough to notice the currency of breath, and steady enough not to trade their alignment for another transaction. Let that breathe. This isn't about motivation. It's about returning to the only kind of wealth that one tea deserts you when times are lean. It's about tending the invisible, not for approval, not for applause, just because it's what's real. That's the discipline. You already know this. The future belongs to those whose energy is sovereign, whose field stays charged, even if the market crashes. Stay with it. You don't need to force. You don't need to rush. You don't need to gather more evidence than what is already clear in your own body. When your energy is aligned, the outer structure cannot help but follow. Quiet prosperity, inner currency, the field over the fortune. Let that land. Let's start with something simple, but not easy to admit. Most of us were trained to get louder, not clearer, to believe that what matters is what you can measure, what you can count, or stack, or compare. There's a part of you that was probably told by people who really believed it, that your worth would be proven by your effort, by how tired you were at the end of the day, by how much you could tick off a list or collect in an account. You probably already know where that leads, because you've run that race. You've run it because the world around you rewarded the sprint, praised the grind, told stories of the hero who outworked, out-hustled, out-sacrificed everyone else. We all heard it. If you just work harder, you'll finally get there. But here's what they don't tell you: working harder, if it comes from the wrong place, will just lead you deeper into survival. You might get the result, you can hit the number, win the deal, make the money, but it never feels safe. It never feels like enough, because you weren't moving from enoughness. Let that echo. Here's where the model is backwards. Money is not the thing, it's the echo. Your state, the way you move, breathe, think, hold yourself. That's the sound. Picture it like a bell. You are the bell. Money is the ringing. All your focus. If it's constantly reaching for the ring, you forget the bell. You can't worship the echo and expect the sound to improve. There's an old parable from Zen, maybe you've heard it before. There's a temple bell covered for years with dust. People come and sit in the hall, waiting, hoping for that clear sound. Some shout encouragement at the bell. Some push it, hoping to force a chime. Nothing changes. Then one silent monk approaches. He bows. With presence, he polishes the bell. He breathes. When he finally rings it, the sound is pure, clear, lasting. The echo is only as true as the sound. No force, no shouting, no rushing could change that. That's us. We keep pushing, shouting at life to give us the echo without ever tending the instrument. Every time you hustle for worth, you forget the bell. Every time you strain, thinking one more sale, one more client, one more zero will finally let you relax. You lose touch with the tone of your own frequency. The real work is not in chasing the outcome, in tuning the being. You already know this. Let's get honest. How many times have you delayed peace, telling yourself, just a little more suffering, then I'll get to rest? How many times has your body whispered enough, but you hustled through anyway? Do you see how, even when you achieve, but it's expensive, the bill comes later? The spiritual debt adds up, and the emptiness comes for all of us, especially when the world stops cheering. That silence at the end of a long hustle. That's not failure, that's feedback. The echo fades, and you start to hear the bell cracked, dulled, overplayed. Nothing to prove. This is the paradox most never see. Abundance isn't a reward for struggle. Scarcity isn't a punishment for laziness. They're frequencies, they're states. You don't manifest more by squeezing harder, you Manifest more by holding a cleaner vibration. When you're stable, the echo takes care of itself. The more you sacrifice your tone for the sake of the ring, the less resonance you hold. It's like crafting a house on sand. Doesn't matter how high you build, something always feels off. Some part of you never arrives. Picture the craftsman. He sharpens his tools before he starts. He clears his workspace before striking a single nail. The world sees the finished piece and thinks, that's talent. But he knows it's the hours spent tending the invisible that determine the result. If you overlook that part, the work always hollows out, the reward decays. Alignment is the discipline, the slow, silent tuning, over and over, before a single move gets made. Let that land. So what happens if today you stop fixating on echoes? What if you honor the bell, the breath, the field that holds you? What if you made your energy, your clean presence, the first priority, not the afterthought, not a tactic, just a return, a retuning, over and over until what you desire and what you embody are the same note? No shame for the most people think their results come from what they do, but the truth is quieter. Most of what you call your life is just resonance, not effort. Sit with that for a second. You act, you plan, you grind, but underneath all of it, your signal is broadcasting, and everything and everyone is listening. So let's start with a question that nobody asks on the surface. What if reality is more like an echo than a scoreboard? What if money, love, and luck are just reflections of your inner frequency? What if everything you're chasing is already moving toward you, not because you work harder, but because you tune in and let it match you? You can pretend this stuff doesn't matter, or you can look around you, the people you attract, the clients who say yes, the deals you close or miss. It's all tuned to what you're living beneath the tasks. It doesn't matter how many tactics you stack. If your broadcast is static, the world returns static. Simple. That's not philosophy. That's the old physics. This isn't about motivation. I want to anchor this with something timeless. The Tao Te Ching says, when you realize where you come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind as a grandmother, dignified as a king. You are like a valley, always present, always available. What you are flows outward, not the other way. You attract not what you want. You attract what you are. That's not up for debate. It's just the law of resonance. So let me hand you 3 stories. Each one happened in the real world, not a retreat, not a book. First, the magnetic client effect. I worked with a healer deeply gifted but frantic, posting every day, running Facebook ads, hustling for leads, cold messaging people. Underneath it all, her energy was hungry, needy, jagged. Every reach out reeked of desperation, even if the words were strategic. She called it service, but what landed was scarcity. I told her, put the phone down, end the campaign, go off-grid, she argued. Then finally, she listened. She meditated, walked for an hour in silence, journaled about what she stands for, remembered her worth not as a tactic, but as a state. 3 days later, 3 client inquiries, not planned. No posts, no pitches. The field changed. Reality responded. That's the mechanic. Let that land. Next, the relationship mirror. There's a man in this community, high performer, solid in his work, restless in his love life, always chasing women who didn't want him, always overextending, performing, asking for approval. Over time, exhaustion set in. He was addicted to the wrong mirror, seeking significance from women who never saw him. One day, he stopped the chase, sat with himself like a brother, tended to the younger parts inside the part that felt unlovable. His frequency shifted quietly. 2 months later, a woman came into his life, present, grounded, no drama, just resonance. The game was the same, but he wasn't playing it anymore. He was broadcasting calm. He attracted calm. Like attracts like. No shortcuts, that's the discipline. Most people never pause to ask, what's the real signal I'm sending? You can tell by what keeps showing up, not what you wish for, not what you post online. What always finds you, even when you change your job or your city. The field doesn't lie. It returns what you're carrying if you hide it from yourself. There's nothing to prove. Creativity, same principle. I know a designer, crazy, talented, brilliant mind, but he burned out chasing inspiration, forced every brief, stayed up late, scrolling mood boards, watching what others were doing, week after week, nothing fit. Everything was pressure, urgency, control. Then he let go, lit a candle, made tea, sat in a quiet room, and stopped trying. He didn't solve the problem. He got coherent inside, like a piano retuned. He let his system find its pitch. The next morning, the idea dropped in, simple, clear. The client called it his best work ever. Energy before outcome. Inner field before outer wind. That's how it works. Not always overnight, but always honest. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. Think, 2 radios, one playing loud static, one tuned to a clear signal, both using the same air, both calling themselves radios. Only one is worth listening to. Life is like that. Everyone is transmitting. Most are just unaware of the static. Some are dialed in. They don't force, they receive. That's not mystical, that's technical. Money, too. If you're always reaching, always tense, always scanning for the next fix, money feels far. But what if the next breakthrough isn't another push, but a pause? What if the real force is quiet, not loud? What if every time you force, you move further from what's already yours? What if the discipline is to do nothing until it resonates? What if everything you're chasing is repelled by your chasing? That's not theory. That's something you've already touched in small ways, but maybe ignored because it felt too easy, too quiet, too little like work. Alignment over action. Sit with this. When was the last time you ran yourself in circles? More tasks, more messages, more effort, and ended up with scraps instead of satisfaction. Where have you mistaken movement for meaning? Where in your calendar are you building scaffolding and calling it a cathedral? This isn't shaming. This isn't an accusation. It's an invitation to look honestly at the structure you're building each day. Imagine an architect laying brick after brick, faster and faster. Supplies running, hands sweating, dust in the air. It looks productive, but the foundation is crooked. Every layer added on a tilt, every wall straining to stand. That's force. Next door, another builder works differently. He surveys. He listens to the ground. He checks for true north before the first stone. Maybe it's slow to start. Maybe onlookers think he's wasting time. But when he does move, each stone lands exactly where it belongs. A month later, his structure stands in silence. No need for repair, no rush, no apology. That's alignment. Force builds quickly. Alignment builds forever. This isn't about motivation. Let that land. Alignment isn't avoidance. It's not an excuse to do nothing. Alignment asks for discipline, for honesty, for the courage to stop pretending, to wait for rightness, even when it's uncomfortable. I've watched this play out in men and women with more resources than they can count. Launch after launch, always running, always rebranding, always cranking the gears, and every time they end up tired and empty. Each new attempt a thicker wall against their own clarity. But I've also watched what happens when someone drops the performance, sits still long enough to feel the right direction, and lets the next step come from what's true. That's the discipline. Remember the entrepreneur who kept releasing offerings the market told him would win? But every cell in his body said no. Every launch fell flat. The moment he allowed himself to scrap it all, to only build what genuinely moved him, he called it irresponsible, but it was just uncomfortable. Within weeks, the results changed. He didn't try harder. He got honest. Truth magnetizes. You already know this. Another man built his company not on hustle, but on anchored, showing up, only acting when he was centered. He'd rather appear unreliable than show up misaligned. His brand grew quietly, without the drama, without burnout. The world told him to grind. He listened for clarity. Rest became his hidden asset. There was a day I canceled a webinar minutes before the start. My body said no. Everything in me was tight. Old me would have forced it, faked the smile, filled the air. That time I honored the pause. No damage was done. Trust was built instead of broken. People thanked me, not for what I gave, but for what I refused to force. Let that sit inside your chest. Force feels empty, even when it fills your schedule. Alignment looks lazy until you see the result lasting years longer than the forced wave. There's old wisdom. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. You can't create from stress and expect depth. You can't force a river to run uphill and call it flow. Real power comes from attunement, checking for the subtle tilts before you build higher. Stand still, feel the ground. Wait longer than your ego wants, for your center to catch up with your ambition. Sometimes the strongest move is not another move, but a full stop. Sometimes the most creative. What if your biggest dream could only grow as far as you were willing to tend your inner ground? What if the field you're standing in, your body, your mind, your invisible climate was the real asset, not the thing you're chasing after? Have you ever paused right before expanding and asked, is my soil even fertile yet? Or am I just scattering seeds because I think I should move faster? Most people think scaling is about adding more hours, more people, more deals. It's a kind of reaching, like being convinced if you plant enough things in rocky earth, eventually something will catch. But if all you do is scale a patch of neglected land, all you're really doing is multiplying neglect. Let that land. There's a secret most Dan T mention. The intensity of your vision will only grow as deep as your energetic roots can drink. If you build your house on unsettled ground, every gust feels like a threat. If you plant a garden, but never check the quality of your soil over time, even the strongest shoots begin to fail. Your field, your internal state, is the garden where every dream, every outcome takes root. To expand what you harvest, you don't just throw more seeds. You slow down, you prune, you water, you pull weeds, you make space. I learned this watching a friend, let's call him a CEO, though he'd never use the term. His company was scaling quickly. Everything outward looked like growth, bigger numbers, more headlines, new partnerships. But behind closed doors, his body was in revolt. Nausea every morning, insomnia that left him awake well past midnight. He had the strategy, the money, the people, but not the capacity, not the field, not stable earth. We did something that felt almost backward. We stopped. We brought in breath work, simple rhythms, 3 breaths, pause, 3 breaths again. We cut off the overgrown parts of his calendar. We created quiet, like pulling weeds from soil. He marked his mornings as untouchable, just for stillness, just for him. The board called it risk management. His body called it permission. And within 2 months, the chaos that had been multiplying softened. More revenue came, but it was quiet this time. His sleep came back. His energy came back. The garden, finally tended, could begin to expand again. This isn't about motivation. Think of your life as that garden. Some seasons, nothing grows. Some parts, scorched, compacted, refusing to yield. But even barren ground can return to life with enough care. You don't scale what you haven't tended. You don't harvest out of a season you haven't honored. The most important work happens before anyone sees you. The simplest routines, how you sit with yourself each morning, how you close the door to noise at night, how you notice which companions lift you and which leech your sun. All of these are like compost and water, the unglamorous part, but the real work. Ask yourself, what's leaking from me right now? Energy follows attentions. So what have I been feeding with my hours, my focus, my breath? Where are my boundaries missing, like a broken fence around a sacred garden? Boundaries are not walls. They're not cold. They're not aggression. They are reverence for the field. Every notification is a footstep in your sanctuary. Every yes given out of guilt. Every meeting that dilutes your presence is a weed sprouting and stealing the sun. Protecting your field is not selfish. It is sacred maintenance. It means saying no, precisely so that what matters most can keep growing unhindered. It means letting the soil rest. It means trusting that what is yours can only come if the ground is ready. Let's sit with that. There's a founder I know, not a social media star, not chasing noise. He barely posts, barely markets, but when he enters a space, the energy shifts. He doesn't have to say much. Peace arrives quietly and plants itself at the center of the room. Investors lean in, not because of slideshows, but because his presence speaks what words can't. This field is tended. This ground is safe for growth. People invest in his steadiness. That's frequency leadership. He's the medicine, not because of what he does, because of what he holds inside. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. So, before you build bigger, before you hire, launch, or scale, pause and look at your field. Check for weeds. Notice dry patches. Water what's healthy. Clear what's tired. If your system can't hold more, more will break it, not bless it. Miracles are possible. You can feel the difference when you walk into a room and the air is clear instead of heavy. There's nothing dramatic about it, but something in you wakes up. The world responds to what you bring, not the noise, not the performance, but the steady pulse underneath your choices. Let that land. It's easy to forget that reality is listening for your signal. We get told to push, to fight, to prove we belong, but the real dial that changes the room is silent, unseen, upstream. Your energy is the master key. You already know this. Most people wait for the world to prove they re-safe, then try to relax into their power. But the law is older than that. Power doesn't arrive from outside. It radiates from within, like the smell of coffee, or the warmth of morning sun on bare hands. The frequency you claim is the ground you walk on. You set the signal. You build the weather around you. That's the discipline. You don't have to force flow. You only have to tune your field. When you stand in quiet clarity, the world adjusts. Doors open differently. People hear you with new ears. Opportunities track your signal like a compass finding north. This isn't about motivation. It's not about speed or noise. Some days, the most powerful thing you can do is to guard your field like stone. Hold it the way a mountain holds the sunrise, without rush, without bending. The more you steward your resonance, the less you have to chase. The quieter your center, the wider your reach. Let that echo. Every action is either reinforcing your foundation or eroding it. There's no neutral. Every conversation, every dollar spent, every thought repeated is a vote for the life you believe you deserve. You can fill a schedule with noise and stay empty. Or you can clear a morning, breathe deep, and find that everything you wanted was waiting for you in the stillness. There's nothing to prove. Try this today, before you plan, before you answer, before you send a single message. Ground your field. Close your eyes. Notice the weight of your breath in your chest. Picture your energy as a room you walk into. Would you trust yourself there? Would you want to linger in that space? That's your baseline from that place. What's the next move? Not the one that pleases the world, but the one that stays true to your field. Even one moment of real alignment shifts the entire current of your day. Let's sit with that. Maybe wealth was never about what you stack, but about how you stand. Maybe clarity is all the insurance you need. Maybe peace is the most true form of prosperity, the rarest commodity in an anxious world. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. This is the architecture of calm power, not built in a rush, but layer by steady layer, stone, then mortar, then light. Each choice, a brick, each breath, a reset, each pause, a gateway. You become a transmitter, the temple and the signal. Nothing missing, nothing withheld. The world isn't waiting for your hustle. It's craving your quiet radiance. You are the portal you seek. Hear yourself say this. Let it mean something as you move through the noise. I return to my field. I return to my field. I honor the clarity within me. I honor the clarity within me. I move from peace, not pressure. I move from peace, not pressure. My frequency is my foundation. My frequency is my foundation. I guard my energy with discipline. I guard my energy with discipline. I let aligned action lead. I let aligned action lead. I trust what's meant for me cannot miss me. I trust what's meant for me cannot miss me. I stand sovereign, rooted, and receptive. I stand sovereign, rooted, and receptive. You don't have to hold it all, just the frequency that builds your world. There is nothing broken in you. There is nothing owed. There is only this. Raise your field. Raise your field. Let that echo. Let the world rearrange as you remember what's always been yours.